Hello, everybody. We are here to discuss one of the most important topics within the current football world. We're here to discuss what has been done already in terms of integrity, good governance, financial fair play, club licensing, and we're also going to have the chance to understand the role that is now performed by SIGA. So we have here, we're not going to delay our discussion with many digressions, and I just want to say that a few days ago I've been to a congress in Madrid, and we were discussing about leadership in sports, in football particularly. And it amazed me, something that should be obvious from a long time, but it becomes clear now, that one of the most important qualities that was mentioned by all the participants of the round table that I was moderating back there in Madrid is that now is required to be a leader in sports, somebody involved in the administration of a club or of an association, a confederation, or even FIFA, is integrity. If we make a short journey to 10 years ago, or particularly to the FIFA Gate scandal, which was, and to a certain extent, a CONMEBOL scandal, because most of the officers, high-level officials, were from CONMEBOL, unfortunately for me, since I'm Brazilian. It was not a requirement to have someone leading a sports entity that this person should take care and should behave in accordance to a high level of integrity. Well, now it is. And as Emmanuel will certainly make us believe with good evidence, now is not only required in terms of, the core of sports movement is that should be performed in good faith and with good values, but is also the way to make it profitable nowadays. So we're going to take advantage of Emmanuel's former rich experience by means of his contribution to UEFA, FIFA, and particularly as the head of the European League Association and the World League Association. And also, we're going to not just scratch the surface, but go deeper on the analysis of the club licensing system of the Asian Football Confederation, using for that the expertise of Mahajan, who is working with that since the beginning, since 2010. So I used to say that, and I'm going to just wrap everything now from my part, that I consider that the football industry is an adult, but as we saw from these scandals, being an adult and this adultness doesn't mean that it's mature. And I think that the maturity comes exactly when we begin to import and to use good tools of good governance from another segments of the industry in general in the world. So that's what we're going to discuss right now. And for that, I will begin with Emmanuel asking you if, in general terms, first, let's see what's the perspective, if you can describe the European club football landscape, what's happening in terms of, in general terms, performance, financial, governance, what can you tell us from the beginning?
Thank you, Daniel. First of all, let me tell you how pleased and delighted I am to be here again in China. I was here 2 years ago, also speaking in a major international conference, and I'm here again to share our views and give our contribution to what is the sparking of a new era in terms of global football. And seizing this opportunity, I would like to start by commending the efforts that have been spearheaded by the AFC, Sheikh Salman right at the top, because we see the wheel spinning. In Europe, this is particularly clear. Europe had, let's say, over the last 10 years, a two-period window. The first years were the years of the recession and the post-recession, where European clubs accumulated debts over debts, which reached a shocking sum of 1.7 billion euros in 2008, 1.6 billion the year before, into what is now a profit-making European landscape in terms of top level. So things are improving. To that end, a lot was done by UEFA and by all the stakeholders, including the leagues and the clubs and the players, to create a new culture, a new mindset, where clubs finally learned that they could not live beyond their means. They could not overspend. For that, the UEFA club licensing system, which I had the privilege and the pleasure to contribute to shape since the early days in 2000, has been a game changer. And I think also led to inspirations in other continents, including in Asia, where our friend here is leading those efforts. So the profitability of the game has also improved massively in terms of revenue generation, despite the years of severe recession with massive unemployment, massive bankruptcy of companies, including in the sporting industry. Still, football clubs and leagues were able to grow at the average of 5 to 7, maybe 8% a year. That was caused mainly to long-term or mid-term television right deals, as you know, with central selling and mid-term TV deals. Professional football was able to remain immune to the crisis and even to show growth, which contrasts clearly with other sectors and activities. So financially, there has been progress. Challenges remain. Right at the top, the governance of international federations, leagues and clubs. The challenges are identified, they are known. Action has occurred, but the pace of change has been too slow, which aggravates the fears of a new crisis with all the spiraling negative effects that we have seen in the FIFA gate, which you mentioned. Don't think that because we appear to live in a dormant reality, things are not happening and investigations are not being carried out. That's a fatal mistake. Also, I mentioned that the progress was made in terms of revenue generation, but also costs have escalated. What we have also seen was, on one hand, a severe polarization of revenues, but also of costs, with the big 5 leagues leading the charge. And when I say this, of course, I acknowledge the fact that for example, the dominant league in Europe, which is the English Premier League, whose clubs in 2007, 60% of them had massive operational losses. In 2017, only one, but within the threshold established by UEFA, which is the 70% ratio between revenue and ratios. But also, new income streams have arrived to Europe, fueled by the digitalization of football. And I think in the previous panel we have seen how attentive have the main players in Asia in the broadcasting and digital landscape have been. But also, for example, in terms of club ownership, the origins and the motivations of the foreign investment in European clubs have given birth to serious concerns. There have been serious episodes where some of these financial streams are linked to less transparent activities or less transparent investment funds, predominantly based in offshore and in some areas not far from where we are. So, taking into consideration how things have evolved, the huge amount of work that has been done by all the key stakeholders, but mainly the huge amount of work that still remains to be done, I would say that we are at the critical juncture. We have a critical crossroad ahead. And the only way to ensure that the game continues to rise in popularity, global appeal, attracting new fans, contributing also to the diversification of the entertainment industry, is by ensuring that it remains clean. Clean from criminal infiltration, clean from any ambiguity as far as governance is concerned, as far as transparency is concerned, and that, of course, I could speak volumes about players' transfers, club ownership, sponsorship deals, and of course, youth development, which is another important sector, and quite rightly elected by China as one of its crucial factors to catapult China to the forefront of professional football worldwide. And what SIGA brings at the end of the day is a common approach and a global solution to a global problem, uniting all sides of the industry, from governments to sports organizations, from international institutions like the European Union or the UN or the World Bank and others, to civil society, where the universities, the academies, the NGOs also have an important role to play, including the sponsors. I would say even particularly the sponsors, because the sponsors, I used to say, they invest not only their money, massive, increasing amounts of money, but their reputation too. So the question that I wanted to raise to the previous speakers that were here on the stage is, where do you place sport integrity when you consider strategically where to invest your money, your shareholders' money? And how far are you prepared to go in order to ensure that as part of this collective effort, we do work to enhance the way football is governed and operates with the utmost integrity standards?
Thank you, Emmanuel. Mahajan, where are we now? I know in Asia it's difficult to make an X-ray that could embrace all the realities that we have within a confederation, but basically, what's the direction that the clubs are following now?
Yeah. Thanks, Daniel, for that question. And thank you, Emmanuel, for that insight. We were having this discussion, the warming up conversation outside, and Emmanuel was telling me that integrity is directly proportional to profit in football business. So, I mean, this was an insight which we should further explore that statement, I'm sure. And we started club licensing, as we discussed earlier, in 2010 onwards. And as you know, the Confederation of Asia is from all the way from the Arabian deserts until Australia, are so wide and varied in terms of language, culture, time zones, business etiquettes. It's so different that we cannot have a single scale. However, we are trying to do that with the scale of club licensing requirements. We have the Champions League club licensing requirements, which are 49 in numbers. All clubs which aspire to participate in the Champions League should comply with these requirements. And finally, we have seen that 388, around 400 football clubs were applying, which showed the aspiration to participate in the continental top club competition, which is the AFC's Champions League. And of which 65, around that number, percentage of clubs successfully got a license to participate in our competition, which means that the professional football in Asia is waking up now. And again, it is not in the same rate in each of the countries that we are operating. We have, like, football clubs from Japan or Korea or Australia, or well-developed economic countries where it is easier for us because it is mostly self-governed also. There doesn't need much intervention from the Confederation. However, in some of the other countries where it is, the development of the country is still ongoing, we will have a lot more to do. In some countries, there is no clubs which are registered as a legal entity, as a business unit. So we have to start from the scratch. And in some countries, the clubs are owned or operated by governments or by military or the police or navy. So in which case we will have to realign the whole system to bring it into the line of a professional football. So these are the things that we had been doing, and in some of the countries we are still working with the clubs. However, I have to say that over the last few years, starting from 2012, which was the first season wherein we requested clubs needs to have a license to participate in our competitions, until now, I'm confident to say that we have achieved huge progress in terms of professionalism. And this is mostly, from my point of view, on the governance side. On the profitability side, this is a matter that we have to discuss. We are left with lots of work to do on the profitability of football clubs in Asia.
Specifically in regards to the profitability and to take the best advantage of your club can offer or your league can add to you in case of Europe, for instance, what do you think that is the next, Emmanuel, the next step that can be done? We know that the television rights in Europe skyrocket, they are very high, which gives to the big European clubs and leagues a big advantage to compete within an international dimension for paying more amounts for transfers, so on. So what do you think it's the next catch?
Well, I think it's, you know, when I started at the forefront of professional football 25 years ago, the pace of change was slow. And we could anticipate, we could foresee, we could talk and analyze how the previous decade was and how the next decade would be characterized of, what would be the main driving forces, one way or the other. Nowadays, everything is faster. Reality and time became relative concepts. So it is impossible to determine what's going to happen in 3 years' time. But I would say that the trends that are designed show, I think, encouraging signals, but also some disturbing signals. Encouraging signals, we see the booming in the broadcasting and the digital landscape, leading to new consumer patterns, a more closer, profitable relation between clubs, leagues, and fans, consumers. We see also a huge investment in terms of stadia. Stadia now are conceived not just as a venue to host a match every fortnight. Stadiums are business engines for 365 days revenue generation. That leads to sponsorship, fan entertainment, brand activation, a number of synergies and mechanisms that we have explored. So I have no doubt that in terms of the increase of revenue, the trend is to rise. That is also fueled by another factor, the globalization. And the globalization is not just the globalization of top-level competitions. We have been following what is happening regarding FIFA new competition plans, but look to the leagues. I mean, the Premier League announced recently that they foresee, in terms of international revenues, an increase of 30%. They broadcast to 211 countries. They had in the previous cycle, if I'm not mistaken, 3.4 billion pounds, and now they have announced 4.5 billion pounds. So it's massive. So the popularity, the global appeal of the game is increasing. However, this brings new challenges. What's going to happen in the broadcasting landscape? Because it's not only the traditional television rights. Yeah. It's the television, it's the digital. It's the emergence of new actors like Twitter, like Facebook, like Amazon, and other big brands who have been on stage here earlier today. New challenges in governance and integrity, which will determine the speed and the dynamics in terms of moving forward or moving backwards, retraction, confidence or distrust from the sponsors and investors. So the reality is much more complex, much more sophisticated, fast-paced, accelerated, more competitive. However, the response from sports governing bodies and governments and other key stakeholders have not matched the speed of the change that we have witnessed In many ways, the market has been driving itself forward and sometimes backwards in terms of integrity, because for some reason or the other, despite what we have witnessed, despite the severe crisis in reputation that we have experienced and we still experience, reforms are late, reforms are slow, and the cultural change where integrity is placed at the top is not yet there.
And sometimes they're wrong.
And
We see
sometimes
with the treatment that was done in regards to agents, because now FIFA is having to step back and recognize that the agents are there, they are still working, they will work. So, I mean, simply preventing them from participating in the system
you cannot just
definitely
banish them.
was not the solution.
I think it's a no-brainer to say that we have identified the solutions a long time ago.
Yeah.
If you want really to bring financial integrity and transparency into the players' transfer market, you need to have a global clearinghouse so that you know where's the money coming from, where's the money going to, and who are the intermediaries, and what are the checks and balances of those involved in the transaction. How can you ensure that there is integrity when you have still a dominant presence and intervention from investment funds based offshore, without any scrutiny, without any due diligence? And I bring into the equation FIFA, because FIFA is football's governing body and has special responsibilities which cannot be neglected. So I do not understand why we don't have, still, we are in 2019, as far as I know. I've been talking about this for more than a decade. I presented solutions within the FIFA committees when I was leading the European and World Leagues. Why? Why are we still
Save a little bit for the
in this state?
for the final, for the grand finale. just a sec.
No, but
I mean, no, I
Daniel,
agree
it's
with you.
a clear
And
question
no, I know.
that demands a clear response.
Just one small remark. Some of the ideas that you were bringing about this control, they were already embraced by the TMS at a certain extent. They don't reach all the objectives that you've seen, but it seems that they are also thinking about something similar in regards to the solidarity mechanism for the future. And also to the payment of the agents. I think in the reform they will deal with that, which means that, you're right, many things should be adopted. But just to keep,
Can I just make a brief comment, 30 seconds? 30 seconds. The TMS is like fighting with arrows and slings. What requires a true nuclear therapy. It's not enough.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's not enough, but I mean, it's much better than it was
Better
in
than
the
nothing, yes.
pre-TMS era. In regards to Asia, okay, as Manuel described, we have revenues that can come from the best use of a stadium, of an arena, you have sponsorship, you have television rights, but particularly, I wonder if you think that also can be an important source to be better explored by the Asian clubs, the formation to form and retain players in order to transfer them. We know that many Asian players are targeted by big European clubs, but still, it doesn't seem that the Asian clubs, I'm seeing by a South American perspective, that you could take more money from that activity. How do you see that?
For that, the question is that why is that the Asian clubs are not trying to make more revenue out of talent development, right? That's the basic question there. And it seems that the primary objective of clubs in Asia is to win matches. And they are too much concentrated into that, they don't bother about many of the other things. Even generating revenue by their own, by means of sponsorship of merchandise or whichever ways. They are getting money from other sources, which is more or less assured, either from the government or from a wealthy benefactor, and they are spending it on achieving success on the field. So that, which needs to be changed. So that one of the requirements, in fact, two of the requirements in the AFC club licensing are with youth teams and youth development programs. So that now we insist that every club which aspires to participate in the AFC competitions should have at least 3 youth teams and also a youth development program, which should at least cover 4 to 7 years. So eventually, we hope to see more talent being developed by the football clubs in Asia itself, and I am sure the clubs in Europe are looking forward to find proper talent back in Asia, because this is one of their huge markets.
Yes.
Telecasting-wise or sponsorship-wise, Asia is one of the biggest markets, be it China, India, or the Middle East and African countries. So, I mean, few of the Arab countries. So what I'm saying is that there is a huge potential, and the potential is now being seen by the football clubs in Asia, and we are trying our best from the confederational point of view to drive the point home that you can make your own money. You can also reduce your expenses of buying expensive players from Europe, which most of the times are out of the leagues because of their advanced ages. In European countries, they are brought over to Asian leagues. So we can avoid such things here by developing their own talent, which also gives them more money and less expenses on talent acquisition.
Which means also it's key to find the balance in terms of break-even rule.
Yes.
The compliance of the break-even rule.
And we are giving this message very seriously to our stakeholders, which are the football clubs and member associations.
Unfortunately, we don't have too much time, so I ask both of you to be very, very objective, because I'm really interested to know, Emmanuel, what should be improved in terms of the club licensing system within the UEFA mainframe? What should be done now to make it even better?
I think the UEFA club licensing system is the best antidote to a number of threats and concerns that we have seen emerging and reached a peak half a dozen years ago. The effort that UEFA has led, supported by the leagues and the clubs and the players, has been absolutely outstanding. There are, however, still reforms to be driven. And that includes, right at the top, club ownership. We cannot continue to have any ambiguity regarding investment in the ownership of clubs. We should not continue to be concerned about who is the ultimate beneficial owner of any club, not just in Europe, but everywhere. The fact that many clubs are controlled by investment funds operating offshore, including in the British Virgin Islands, a country that is proud, or at least very vocal, in terms of placing financial integrity at the top. There is no reason to continue to love a game that is played in front of millions, in front of everyone, in broad daylight, and yet some of its aspects, like some financial transactions, operate in the dark. There is no reason for that. And I call on UEFA, and I call on FIFA, and I call on the leagues, who I am proud to have funded and led for a decade and a half, to place this reform at the top of their agenda.
Why they don't do that? Why do you think the reason behind? Just financial?
The reason behind
money at all costs?
No, it's because it's a global problem that requires a global solution and greater attention and intervention from governments. Look at the Panama Papers and the murky reality that was unveiled.
Yeah.
This was in 2014. David Cameron, then Prime Minister of the UK, led a micro summit to discuss and address the topic. What has been done? Where are we? Nothing but words. So here, actions will speak louder than words, and the reason why SIGA exists as an independent, neutral, multi-stakeholder coalition is to make sure that we move from intentions to realities, and that implies a concerted global effort in which everyone, including those in this room, have an important role to play. We call on the leaders of the sport movement, including in the AFC and UEFA, with whom we have a very close dialogue and very fruitful cooperation, to give the step forward and really push for this ultimate reform. If we do not do this, we risk to perpetuate and aggravate a reality that will bite us in the near future. As we have seen, including in my own country, a country that continues to navigate despite the most blatant examples of opaqueness in some of the investments. The only way to anticipate the future is to deal with it in the present, and that is by reforming it.
Just as a South American lawyer, I work for many clubs and agents in South America and other places, and we know. I mean, it was very important for us, the economic rights, used in a proper way. But it doesn't matter the position that you might have about that, if you are in favor or against economic rights. The fact is that if FIFA tackled, and it did, the economic rights as part of the integrity big plan, it's incomplete by not tackling in the proper way this ownership, club ownership. That's for sure for me. It's a contradiction that you deal with the not small, but definitely smaller amounts of money involved in every and each particular deal with economic rights, and you don't tackle properly with the proper scrutiny the club ownership.
May I just add one little thing, because I do not want to leave any doubt about my stance. My stance is not to cast a shadow and an anathema over foreign investment. On the contrary, I am one of the few individuals who has led a club, a league, an international organization. I know what it is to expect a revenue to be able to pay a bill. I know this. It's a big difference. This is not learning books. But whilst investment, regardless of origin, is welcome, it must be transparent. It must be clean. Otherwise, sport, or football, would not be a sport. It would be a shame. So that is my call, my quest.
Mahajan, bringing to Asia, we know that the Asian, the system that is applied by the Confederation, it's not still in the level of UEFA maybe, but it's by far, in my experience at least, the second best in place in the world. That's for sure. But still, which kind of improvement do you think that should be focused now, exactly now? I know just one thing, just to provoke you, and I'm not sure if everybody knows, but the club licensing within a continental dimension can only target the clubs that participate in the continental competition. So can you speak to us about how to tackle that within a national dimension?
I understand. First of all, the Asian club licensing regulations are not much different from the UEFA club licensing regulations. In fact, I would say it is being better administered, because we, in Asia, were the first one to develop an online platform, which is called the AFC Club Licensing Administration System, or the CLAS. With this, the clubs can upload their documentation from their offices into this online platform. It can be reviewed by the decision makers in their meetings in this platform itself, and they can decide based on the assessment which is provided by this platform that how far each of the club have complied. A level of compliance will also be visible in this tool itself, and the decision makers of the licenses can make their decision based on that. And appeals can also be preferred within this online system itself. So in that sense, I think AFC is a pioneer in terms of administering the club licensing. Back to your question of what are the things that I would like to see improved within our requirements. As I mentioned earlier, we have 49 requirements covering sporting, infrastructure, personal, legal, and financial requirements. And all of this, I think, if any of the clubs complies with completely, then I think that will indeed lead to the progress of that club. However, there is a difference in compliance in each of these requirements in each of the countries that we are operating. In some countries, the level of compliance on the youth development program will be very high. However, they will not have the infrastructure criteria in place. In some countries, the clubs may not be legally registered itself, so I cannot insist that you need to have an audited financial statement. So each of the countries, it have its own difficulties, and which cannot be addressed by increasing the requirements in the club licensing regulations that we already have. what we are doing now is to work with each of our MAs and the clubs. Our development officers, Sonam and Yogesh, are here. These are the people who work on the ground with the clubs and the member associations to make sure to find out what is their problem first, and then to address it properly. So, and we have a elaborate mechanism and machinery working on that alone. So for me, I don't think that we can address this deficiencies by adding more requirements which the club should comply, but rather by asking for more compliance of the existing requirements. Mm-hmm. Again, one thing that we are always insisting is on the integrity matters. We make sure that the players and clubs are given enough education regarding integrity in sports.
That's fundamental.
Yeah. What else can you add about the procedures and the stakeholders and about the club licensing system, just to wrap it up?
It's more or less similar to what UEFA has. Emmanuel had the experience of starting with club licensing in UEFA right from its inception, and it's more or less the same. We have we first approached the member associations, telling that this is a statutory requirement that every member association will have to deliver, because it is included as a responsibility of the member association, the FIFA statutes and the AFC statutes. So it's a statutory requirement. Otherwise, they cannot vote in the next Congress. So they are forced to do that. Otherwise, sometimes they won't see the benefits of implementing club licensing. So we will have to have some leverage.
Can you just give me numbers about clubs that were prevented from competing because of problems with licensing? Do you have any numbers from 2018?
Yeah. We have country-wise, we have at least 8 countries where at least one club could not participate, even though they were the league winners. They could not participate in the Champions League because they could not get a license from that country's licensor. It's not AFC licensing, so it's not our fault. The licensor is the member association itself who said that you cannot get this license, and then they can go on an appeal, and most of the times the appeal will fail because they didn't produce their own documentation. And main thing that the club fails is the requirement to audit themselves. So we insist that every club should produce their audited financial statements towards the end of the year, the last season.
Any club was prevented to participate due to another reason not linked to a financial aspect, like clubs,
legal registration,
like youth competitions or something?
Yeah, of course. There are few clubs which didn't have the required youth teams, but those are all matters which, if they notice early, we can give an exception, because the youth teams, we insist one should be under 18, one should be under 15, and the other can be of any age. But sometimes the youth development system in that country might be having under 17 and under 14. In which case, they will have to tell us earlier, this is our scenario, please give us an exception. If the MA is not responsible enough, this will be overlooked, and eventually they will not get a license. So there were cases happening in that way also. And also, one of the things as a club ownership, the club might change its ownership, and we insist that every club should be in existence at least for 2 years before they can apply for a license. And once the club changed their ownership, we will consider this to be as a new club.
Okay.
Because there might be change in the legal structure, ownership, logos, or whatever that is of the football club. So they will have to ask us for an exception for that requirement of 2 years, which some of the times they won't do, and they will end up not getting a license and not participate in the Champions League.
Before we jump to the questions from the audience, I would like to show a video. But first, your final remarks, Emmanuel. What would you like to add?
Well, I go straight to the point, and I don't want to echo what has already been said, but I would like to leave my last words to be words of optimism, of encouragement, but also of challenge. So I challenge everyone in this room and outside to unite efforts to turn a new page in the way the game is governed and operates, to continue to justify the passion of the fans and the interest of the investors. The only way to continue to drive further advancements in the professional football industry is by having the highest integrity standards. We have alluded to this, we have explained where are the main critical challenges and what has to be done. We at SIGA are about to implement a major reform, an independent and neutral, objectively driven reform. That is an independent rating system. From now on, every government that invests public interest in sport, every sponsor that invests their money and their reputation, every family that trusts a sporting organization with the training and education of their children will have SIGA independent rating system, which goes by the acronym SERVS, as the key barometer, as the key filter, as the key check for judging whether that league, whether that federation or club is fit for purpose. We have worked relentlessly with the international community to design a set of universal standards that will encourage sports organizations to improve their governance, financial integrity, sports betting integrity, and youth development and child protection. This is the first independent effort to bring a global solution and a global approach to what are global challenges and global threats. We have went through a very thorough independent procurement process to find who would be that independent third party that would operate SERVS. We have adjudicated that after a year of long work to the British Standards Institute, who everyone in this room will agree is the top of the tree in this sector. So we want to contribute in a positive way, so that it's not just by hearsay, it's not just by aspiration or expectations. We want to make sure that when the organizations proclaim that they are fit for purpose, that they are indeed. And that comes with the implementation of the SIGA Universal Standards and with the assessment and verification which will be performed within the framework of SERVS. And of course, we invite the AFC to join us. I have had many conversations with Sheikh Salman and the leadership of AFC. We are going into a very matured and advanced stage of our conversations, and I hope that AFC will follow the footsteps of another big confederation with whom we are about to sign a cooperation agreement, so that we can truly unite all those who care about sport integrity to continue to advance and develop such a fantastic sport, which we know as the beautiful game.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Mahajan, your final remarks?
Final remark, I would say that the clubs as of now are viewing sporting success on the field as the reason to exist itself, which is good, but it should also be supported by the administrative efficiency of the management of the club and also profitability. These are the two things the club should be looking into. Not only football clubs, any of us should be looking into these matters, especially these days. We are seeing that clubs are burning money just to get successful on the field. So that needs to be changed, and we need to look into the overall profitability of the football clubs, which can only be achieved through proper administration of the football club. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mahajan. Let's have a flavor about SIGA with the video. Can we, Larry?
Sport has a tremendous potential, but to really use its power for the good of the world, it also needs to change, and which is why your mission at SIGA, the world's largest organization for sports integrity, is so important. Today's forum will promote values that are relevant beyond the world of sport.
I think that it's very important that we partner with SIGA to understand best practices for sport integrity.
What is the role of politicians and government, and where can that bear down on some of the policies that we're developing within SIGA as well?
And if the public is going to invest that much money into sport, the public deserve public accountability for the use of their resources.
SIGA has brought together all the actors, all the stakeholders within sport, from government, from the industry, and from all around the world.
The understanding of the integrity which sits at the heart of our sport that they have, and that we continue to work hard to transmit to that next generation as they come through.
The way that we evaluate new opportunities and existing partnerships for our clients has changed quite drastically.
SIGA has created, if you will, a safe environment to come in. It's a positive, forward thinking. It's meant to work together.
When I became the UK Minister for Sport in 2013, that there was a definite lack of diversity, not just in terms of participation.
But when you look at the senior leadership roles and how many are filled by women, it's about 12%. And at the very highest levels, I think only 6% of CEO positions are held by women.
We decided for the mentors that we would launch an application process whereby women who are aged 24 upwards could apply to spend 5 business days with one of our female leaders.
What isn't commonly known is that through the International Gaming Institute at UNLV, there is a regulator forum where gaming regulators from around the United States can come and meet and have conversation.
It's great to hear what people think and what people want to do, and now it's a case of going forward and doing that. So I look forward to working with SIGA in order to achieve that.
I think SIGA's initiative is fantastic. It's protecting the athlete, the pureness of sport, and I believe that to do this, the integrity has to be questioned at the top of the tree.
On a personal level, I think it's important for me to be the role model for young girls that didn't exist when I was younger.
The journey that SIGA has taken the past 12 months has been truly remarkable.
GW is so excited to have a partnership with SIGA.
SIGA is really advancing some very important actions and work.
Everyone, including SIGA, needs to be involved.
The fact that SIGA has managed to bring those groups together is great.
SIGA is a crucial part.
So that SIGA has been able to bring them to the table.
We are, as you said, the largest independent, neutral and multi-stakeholder coalition. But that is not the privilege. That is a responsibility that falls on each of the shoulders of the men and women you see in this room. And we are prepared to walk the talk.
We are on time, but if any of you have any questions.
Question there.
Over there.
Hi, I'm from India. I had a question for Margin, actually. I was reading about the licensing requirements in India, and there were 5 key requirements, right? I know, as a fact, as a fan and as a member of the sports community in India, a lot of the clubs don't comply. So, what is the current situation regarding how are the Indian clubs complying to the licensing route? And the second part of the question was, has the emergence of ISL forced the I-League, which were the less professional teams earlier, has it forced them to become more professional? And since they also now want to be part of the ISL, it's going to be one league in the future, I guess.
Yeah, I understand the question, and it's also a bit controversial politically these days because we have 2 leagues competing to become the national league, and the AFC and the AIFF and even FIFA is also involved with that negotiation, how to go ahead with that, which I don't want to get into right now. However, the club licensing in India started right from 2013 onwards, and the clubs in the I-League were the ones which were doing club licensing then onwards, and I would say the I-League clubs were doing a good job. I'm not saying that I'm not agreeing with your view that some of the clubs, though have some deficiencies, are not in compliance with the club licensing requirements. Even within the scale of that league, they are doing their best that could be done. And especially regarding youth development program, the I-League clubs were doing a good job. And they were professional. They were professional. However, since the new, more professional league came in, which ironically didn't have the responsibility to do a club licensing, because that was a closed league and it was not the national league, and they didn't have a chance to participate in the AFC competitions at that point. They were not doing a club licensing. So the ISL club started involving with club licensing from last season onwards, and they are also doing well. Hopefully, the whole matter will be peacefully negotiated and settled between the stakeholders, I think. Thank you.
Thank you.
Taking the risk that Dave kills me. One more question.
Good afternoon. I want to ask, like you said, club licensing, when the ownership changes for the club, it's considered as a new club. Whether again they should survive for 2 years to get the license, or is it continued?
Good question. Anyways, one of the requirements, who is the license applicant? It is defined a football club which had been in existence for at least 2 years. So when there is a club which is already in existence for more than 2 years, and there is a change in the management of the football club, we consider that as a change in the legal entity of the football club, and we need to ask the clubs for who are the new owners. Did the old owners take over all the liabilities of the football club and it was paid off? So these questions, we cannot allow a club to just change themselves and come up with a new registration so that all the debts are written on the old legal entity. So that is the whole purpose of this 2-year rule. And when there is a change, it doesn't mean that the club will have to again wait for 2 years. They can ask for an exception, and means that this 2-year rule should be excused. We are a club which had been in existence for more than 2 years. However, there is a change in the management. We need to get an exception for the 2-year rule, and they can write to AFC Club Licensing Unit. And we will be looking into the documentation regarding how the club's management have changed and the new management. And one of the key criteria we will be looking into is that did the new management take responsibility for all the debts of the old management? So that is the crucial point, and that is why we have the 2-year rule. And in UEFA, it's even worse. They have 3 years. Okay. I mean, for better standards, I would say.
Then is it it's different for different clubs? I mean, it depends on their previous records.
Yes. Yes. Sometimes we will say that this new club haven't taken over the responsibilities, especially the financial responsibilities. There may be many of the players or the coaches are left unpaid, and they don't have the financial resources to pay, so they will just register a new club or just change the management and leave the old legal entity as a shell itself. So we can't afford to do that. We won't take that. So we make sure the debts were taken over by the new management before we give an excuse for this 2-year rule.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. No problems.
I'd like to thank you all, and in order to thank these two fine gentlemen, I will ask you to join me to applaud them.
Thank you very much. Thank you for joining. Thanks.